Why is it so important to protect free speech? Why is it so important that there be some forum in a community's public life where individuals are absolutely free to say anything that they want, to express any opinion, to make any hypothesis, to critique, to criticize any person or institution? Why is that so important? Well, I think that there's really two steps answering that question for Kant. First of all, the existence of such a free public forum, the free public use of reason, is absolutely essential for progress to be made in acquiring knowledge and making progress in knowledge, and that's both scientific and especially religious, because it's really religious uh, and spiritual progress that he's perhaps most concerned with protecting in this sense. But progress is not made philosophically, scientifically, politically, morally. All aspects of human culture do not make progress unless people um, are free to investigate and inquire and perhaps make mistakes, but through those mistakes get closer to something that they regard as the truth. That without the free public use of reason, human society, human culture would essentially stop. That is, we would sort of level off, plateau, and not change or move forward, and that would be a terrible thing as far as Kant's concerned. He says, in pages 3 and into 4, he asks the question, would it be okay if a community decided, well, we've got the truth now, either in religious or scientific or other matters. We've arrived at the best opinion, so we're just going to stop here. And no more free speech, no more criticizing, no more inquiring. We've got what we want, and we should just stop. He says that would be a terrible, terrible thing. It would be the worst sort of thing. He says on page 4, this would be a crime against human nature, whose original destiny lies precisely in such progress. So to cut off the human activity of gaining knowledge, moving closer to understanding of the world, of oneself, of God, of nature, of justice, morality, to cut off the human activity of inquiring into those matters and getting closer to the truth of those matters would be a crime against human nature itself. That is, the idea is that inquiry, that groping and struggling towards truth is the most essential part of our nature as human beings. Our destiny lies precisely in such progress. That is, that human beings have a destiny, not just as individuals, but the human species in general, Kant is saying, has a destiny, that is a path that it's meant to take, a journey that it's meant to go on. That journey is towards knowledge. And the only way that is going to happen, the only way that journey is going to be able to proceed, is with freedom. Again, not total, absolute political, moral freedom, but at least the freedom of the use of one's reason. Not in all conditions, but the public use of one's reason. That is, when you and I are addressing a particular group, maybe even each other as individuals, we may feel rightly constrained in what we can say and what we can criticize. But when you and I address human beings in general, what Kant thought was embodied in the reading public, then we should feel absolutely free to say whatever it is we think. If we feel constrained, we feel that there are things that we cannot say, institutions that we cannot critique, then we are committing a crime against ourselves and our fellow human beings, because we need to express those things in order to arrive at truth, and other people need to hear us express those things in order to arrive at truth or have some hope of it. And what Kant seems to want to do is to set up a society or preserve a place, a forum in society, where that kind of free inquiry can go on. He asks a very interesting question, or he makes a very interesting distinction towards the end of this essay on page 5. He says, if it is now asked whether we at present live in an enlightened age, the answer is no. But we do live in an age of enlightenment. That's a very interesting and I think valuable distinction that he makes there. Do we live in an enlightened age? And that notion of the enlightened age would be a notion that we had arrived somewhere. We had achieved enlightenment in the fullest sense. It's clearly not. Now imagine the world of 1784. It's had a long way to go. And imagine our world, which has a long way to go too, in terms of having the right to claim that it's enlightened. It says clearly not. We are not enlightened. Our age is not an enlightened age. However, it is an age of enlightenment. And there he seems to be saying, well, we haven't arrived, but there's a process going on that is clearly progress towards the goal of an enlightened age. It's an age of enlightenment, which means things are getting better. Things are getting clearer. Now, Kant is really focusing on public use of reason and the free use of reason in pursuit of knowledge. But he has a bigger agenda. I mean, it's the 1780s in Europe. The French Revolution hasn't happened yet. The American Revolution has. It's probably not as prominent a fact for a European like Kant as was happening in continental Europe. But it's an age of change, and it's an age where people are aware that things are changing, and that things are changing for the better. Things are becoming more just. Individuals are being treated with more respect, and their dignity is being recognized, and their rights are being recognized to a greater extent. We all hope that this happens in our own age, too. And what Kant seems to be saying is that, you know, in the background, of course, we want everybody to have a share in the economic and political life of our communities. Of course, we want, you know, people not to starve. We want people to have decent lives in terms of their economic lives. They should be secured, protected against the forces of nature and the predation of other human beings. And all these things should be achieved and will be achieved. But what will happen first is a change in knowledge and outlook. Very interesting passage. Page 2. This first full paragraph towards the end, he says, a public can only achieve enlightenment slowly. A revolution may well put an end to autocratic despotism and to rapacious or power-seeking oppression, but it will never produce a true reform in ways of thinking. And it's that true reform in ways of thinking that he thinks needs to precede any kind of real substantive political or economic change. That is, before we change society, we have to change ourselves. And perhaps, you know, the biggest change is that you can't have an enlightened society with only a few enlightened people. For an enlightened society, everybody has to be enlightened. Everybody has to, therefore, have access to education. Everyone has to have protection of their rights, especially the rights of free speech. Everyone must be able to read what they want, to say what they want, again, within the forum of public discussion, not a universal liberty to say whatever you want, whenever you want, but clearly when one is expressing one's deepest opinions, whether they be philosophical or religious or moral, in the public arena, one must feel totally free. And when everybody in a society not only has the right to do that, but has the ability to do that, because they've been given the tools through education of different sorts to actually make use of their reason, maybe then we can say we an enlightened society. But to make progress towards that, the first thing is that we have to be free to say, to hypothesize, to criticize in just the way that we think is right, at least in the public forum. And ultimately, I think Kant has in mind a different sort of society. He says, at the very end, he says, eventually, And that's intellectual freedom, even influences the principles of governments, which find that they can themselves profit by treating man, who is more than a machine, in a manner appropriate to his dignity. Ultimately, Kant is thinking of the value and the dignity of every individual and the rights of every individual being recognized as perhaps the final goal of any society. But how do you get there? You get there by people being free to express themselves. So there's a lot of really interesting themes going on in this essay we have to talk about and you have to write about. I put it in the context of knowledge, the value of knowledge for a human being. That seems to be perhaps the most easily stated theme we have here, taken out of this essay by Kant on human nature, and that is perhaps there's nothing more essential to being a human being than pursuing enlightenment, pursuing knowledge, uh, using our reason in such a way as to gain a better understanding of the world and of ourselves. As we'll see next week when we read Nietzsche, that can be criticized, that idea, but that's pretty much what we want to explore this week.